some kind of communist manifesto, and you talk about this utopian society, whereas the government just takes care of everything, right?
Hello, welcome to the Hard Reset. What just happened?
Whatsoever.
Right.
So they sell them that, make a mint. Next thing you know, dad's like, they made a mint off of it. But then they turn around and they bought another house, like an addition. Literally, it was like 2 streets over. And it's a little bit newer house and like whatever else. And they're like, they love it. But what they didn't realize is when they went to close on the house, they're like, okay, here's what your payment will be. And here's what your rent is for the lot. And they're like, whoa. What lot rent? And they said, well, if you read the fine print, every house in this is owned by XYJ Corporation or whatever. The land is owned by XYJ Corporation. And there's even a clause supposedly in there that at some point they can basically force you to sell the house that's sitting on that property, because say Sam's Club gives up on the area that mom and dad's at and they want that one. That company that owns that basically will sign a deal with Sam's Club that, we will sell you this property, but it'll take us basically like we have to give our tenants that's paid for a $200,000, $300,000 house. We have to give them a year or whatever
to move their
to
house.
Be able to sell, either move their house or sell their, basically sell their house or whatever.
It's just crazy. Sounds like something BlackRock would do.
Oh yeah.
There was this article circulating. It's still out there somewhere. I don't know what the exact title of it is, but basically what it boils down to is certain people in government has this plan for everybody in the future, like this crazy dystopian future where you're not going to own anything. You can't own anything. So, I mean, you got BlackRock going around and just buying up neighborhoods. Yeah. They're not destroying them or anything, but they're renting them out. It's like, well, we're not going to sell you the house, we'll rent it to you. It's where basically, again, it's like in the future, you won't own anything, but you can lease it or you rent it and you're going to be happy with that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's called communism. I mean, communism to the point to where, the base communism, or the highest level of communism is basically you will just work and we will give you a house to live in. So like they own everything. The communists, whatever, the government, whatever you want to call it, owns everything. And we're not going to pay you a wage. We will just give you food to survive on, and we'll give you a house to live in. And if you complain too much or we don't like you, we'll stick you in the public housing, which is like those. Have you ever seen like the
big block houses?
Big block, that's like the classic thing. You see a lot of like Russian, and even like Ukraine was like a former Soviet. A lot of these former Soviet republics, they have huge block, blocks. There's not really houses per se. If there is, it's like some old school houses that look like they're falling down or something. Right.
You have to go outside.
It's like maybe a farmer,
pump the water by hand and all that stuff. Yeah, those things are pretty crazy. I've seen some of those actually.
That's a big thing over there. Is these huge block houses or whatever.
Right, and you're gonna like it.
Yeah, and you're gonna like it, or you won't have any play. And there's no wokeness over there. They don't care about your feelings. Right. You either take that in the same way as if you don't work over there, everybody's wanting to talk about, communism. We'll just we'll get all this stuff free from the government. Right. Be careful what you wish for, because the minute you become totally dependent on it, like say, Russia or something that is right now, they say, you know what? You don't get to pick your job anymore. You're going to go work at,
Oh yeah, right.
You're going to go work at a grain factory, and you have some, one of these TikTok creators or whatever, with their fancy nails and colored hair or whatever. Right. And they're like, we don't care. You're going to go work at the grain factory. And they're like, I can't do that.
I can't. I got to do my twick-twack.
And they're like, well, you will do that or you won't have a place to stay or whatever.
Right.
And I'm sure there was probably, early on in those days, there were probably some people saying, well, I won't do that. Well, they don't care about what you living outside, you being homeless and dying on the street, because they'll literally cut off your food supply and then they'll cut off your, your living quarters. And then you're living outside, and then they control the media, so they just won't film all the homeless people that are croaking on the sidewalk. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's funny because you do hear a lot of, this is kind of sad. That's usually a lot of college students that are saying stuff like that. And then it just makes you wonder, it's like, how did you get in college and you've got this thought process?
That's really like the new hotness, whatever. For probably like the last 10 years, you had these weird philosophical professors of these well-known schools, UC Berkeley, a bunch of others that they're like Marxists. They've read, some kind of communist manifesto, and you talk about this utopian society, whereas the government just takes care of everything, right? And they just, everybody gets the same. The whole, everybody gets the same. Yeah. The communist society, don't believe what I'm saying. Go look at a current communist society.
Yeah, go look at what China's doing right now. Yeah. China, they've gone off the deep end. Well, so far to the point where there's literally people diving off of their balconies. They're like, no, we can't do this anymore. Not doing it. So they commit suicide. Well,
they've tried the ideal communist society. They've tried it over and over and over again, and it's never worked. And the reason being is because, as I've said before, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Right? Oh,
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So if you have a communist society and somebody has to be in charge, like the said government that hands you everything, somebody has to be in charge of that government. Well, now that becomes a class society because either you're part of the government or you're not.
Right.
So then suddenly those people become super wealthy. And, even like we've seen this like during the Soviet Union. If you were like a high ranking general in the army, or you were, somebody that I guess would be like a titan of industry, or in this case, like a friend of the Communist Party or whatever,
right?
You would get put in a position to be the Bezos. You would be, your job would be, you'd get put in charge of Amazon, and you would live. Now, you wouldn't live great because there was only a handful of people that lived great, like a really, really tippy top. You want to talk about 1%,
right?
Tippy top of the Russian society lived like, basically like Bezos or something. Even your Bezos over there just got a little bit more bread than somebody else, or he may have had a Mercedes to drive around instead of whatever those shitbox Russian vehicles were. That whatever. So, that's the thing, is they've tried that, but what happens is ultimately whoever's in charge becomes the dictator.
Right.
Right. And everybody else, you get this Occupy Wall Street and 1% versus the 99, blah, blah, blah. That's exactly what happens in communist society, except for now you have no ability to even argue about it.
Right.
You just get smashed. If you try to, you try to occupy Wall Street in Soviet, the communist Russia, first of all, it would never see the light of day. In other words, media wise, because the state controlled media. They would never see them, water cannoning people into oblivion or running them over with tanks or like whatever else. There would be no tent city. They would go in there probably with flamethrowers or something to set everything on fire. And you wouldn't hear a word about it, right?
Right.
But you have these weird, getting back to the weird college kids, they're reading this ideology because I've read some of the stuff and it seems that it does seem appealing. Like everybody wants everybody to have, have the same or whatever, and some, hippie commune or where everybody grows their own food and, shared.
That's never going to work.
It just doesn't work. And they've tried it time and time again. And for whatever reason, you still have these like college professors, which are now teaching these kids. And they're saying things like, well, they just didn't do it the right way. Like we can make it work. Like, basically the idea is sound. They just haven't done it the right way for the last 2,000 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How many thousands of years? Yeah. That's the difference, though, because these kids in college, what they get to do is they get to do their little social experiment and sit around and be philosophical about it. They don't actually have to put it to real day use and practice, which I think once you do that, then they'd find out it's like, no, that doesn't work. It's kind of like the whole entire, the rich should pay more taxes. It's like, no, I think everybody should pay an equal amount of taxes, regardless. But what I think their thought process is well, if the rich pay more taxes, then I get more money. It's like, no, that doesn't, you don't get more money.
They've proven, if that's the case, they've proven that you essentially, what happens is you kill innovation.
Oh yeah.
In other words, if the the Bezos or the the Elon Musks of the world.
Right.
There's no incentive for them to create new things, because what's the point? If you say there's a magic, I think we maybe talked about this before, but say there's a magic number of, if you make more than $2 million, then the rest of anything that you make above that goes back to, being, cut up amongst the rest of the 99%, right?
Everybody gets an extra dollar. Wow.
Well, but what happens is those guys ramp up, the Bezos ramp up to like $2 million, like real quick. He has no incentive to make things faster, for you to be able to get your packages faster, for you to be able to get your stuff cheaper, because he's going to hit that 2 million or whatever it is real quick.
Oh yeah, easily.
And so all these extra flying drones to bring your package and like whatever else that's causing him to be this multi billionaire now.
Uh-huh.
There's no incentive to do that anymore, because if you come up with one good idea, you're going to hit 2 million like that, and it's going to die right there.
Well, I mean, yeah, definitely. There's no incentive. Then on top of that, you're going to end up where, man, my brain just quit working. I know you're amazed by that.
No, I mean, but my thing is why would you try harder? In other words, why would you try to innovate if once you hit that magic $2 million mark or whatever that you make, say your salary is $2 million and that's the mark where you start having to give it away. Why would you work past that? Why would you be more innovative past the 2 million? Because you don't see anything for that. The whole point of capitalism is it's a direct, the more work you put in, it reflects. In other words, there's some kind of equal thing. If you bust your ass and you do this, and you work those extra hours and you do whatever, and it skyrockets you from 2 million to 10 million in a couple years time. With that 10 million, that $8 million difference or whatever, it's your working. That's where you get like crazy stuff. Like, again, Amazon is a prime example of, even in a 5-year period or whatever, Amazon like skyrocketed, where they have their own drivers that deliver stuff, outside of UPS and all these other.
Right.
They get your packages like the next day or whatever. I'll literally like buy something at 6 p.m. on a freaking Tuesday.
Right.
And it'll be sitting on my porch at like 10 a.m. the next morning.
Oh yeah. I've ordered stuff on a Saturday evening, and it shows up here on Sunday. Which is just crazy, because we're not in like a major city or anything.
Yeah.
Which if you're in a city, you'd probably have it that same day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of interesting how that works out.
So there's no incentive. So that.